The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the general store, and Hannah Drake stepped down into the afternoon sun of Oro Blanco, Arizona territory, pulling her shawl tight despite the September heat of 1878. The driver handed down her single worn trunk without meeting her eyes, and she understood why when she caught the stares of the townsfolk gathering on the dusty street. Her face bore the marks of survival, 3 long scars running from her left temple to her jaw, a legacy from a fire that had consumed her family's Kansas homestead 2 years prior. She had answered the advertisement for a mail-order bride with complete honesty, writing to Lucas Hannigan about her disfigurement, about the death of her parents in that same fire, about her circumstances working in a laundry for barely enough to survive. His response had been brief, but not unkind, stating he needed a wife to help run his ranch and that outer beauty mattered less than character. Now, standing in this unfamiliar town with curious and sometimes pitying eyes upon her, she wondered if he would find his resolve weakening when faced with the reality of her appearance. "Miss Kennedy," a deep voice cut through her anxious thoughts. Hannah turned to face a tall man with sun-weathered skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a striking blue, the color of the sky just after dawn, and they held no shock or revulsion as they met hers. Lucas Hannigan wore simple work clothes, dusty from travel, and held his hat respectfully in his hands. "Mr. Hannigan," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes, I am Hannah Kennedy," he nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. "Welcome to Oro Blanco. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was long," she admitted, "but I am grateful to have arrived safely." Lucas picked up her trunk as though it weighed nothing and gestured toward a wagon hitched nearby. "I have supplies to load, then we will head to the ranch." "It is about an hour's ride. Are you hungry? Thirsty? The hotel serves decent food if you need to rest first." His consideration surprised her. Most of the men she had encountered since the fire treated her either with excessive pity or barely concealed discomfort. Lucas seemed to do neither, his manner straightforward and respectful. "I am fine to travel whenever you are ready. I would like to see my new home." Something flickered in his expression at the word home, but he simply nodded and secured her trunk in the wagon bed. As he helped her onto the seat, his hand was gentle but brief on her elbow, and she noticed the calluses that spoke of hard work. He was perhaps 27 or 28, she guessed, about 7 years her senior, and despite his sun-worn appearance, there was a gentleness in his movements that put her somewhat at ease. The town of Oro Blanco was small, consisting of a main street with the usual establishments, a general store, saloon, church, hotel, and a few other businesses. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against the brilliant sky. As Lucas loaded sacks of flour and other supplies, Hannah watched the rhythm of the town, trying to imagine her life here. A woman with 2 children hurried past, casting a quick glance at Hannah before looking away. Hannah was accustomed to such reactions and had long ago stopped letting them wound her. "All set," Lucas said, climbing onto the wagon seat beside her. He took up the reins and clicked his tongue, setting the horses in motion. They moved through town at an easy pace, and Hannah was aware of his presence beside her, solid and quiet. After they had left the town behind and were traveling through rolling terrain dotted with scrub brush and occasional stands of mesquite, Lucas spoke. "I want you to know that I meant what I wrote in my letters. Your scars do not trouble me, Miss Kennedy. I have seen enough of life to know that what matters is what a person carries inside them." Hannah felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "That is kind of you to say." "It is not kindness, just truth." He kept his eyes on the road ahead. I lost my wife 3 years ago. She died giving birth to our son, and the baby did not survive either. For a long time, I could not see past that grief. But a man cannot run a ranch alone forever, and more than that, I found I was lonely. The silence in that house became too much. I am sorry for your loss, Hannah said softly, and she meant it. She understood grief intimately, and I for yours. You wrote that you lost your parents in the fire. Yes. My father tried to get my mother out, but the smoke overcame them both. I was outside fetching water from the well when it started. By the time I realized what was happening, the flames were too high. I tried to go in through the side door. She touched her scarred cheek without thinking. The door frame collapsed as I entered. A neighbor pulled me out, but I could not reach them. Lucas was quiet for a moment, then said, "You tried. That took courage, or foolishness. I nearly died too, and for nothing." "Not nothing. You are here. You survived. That matters." They rode in silence for a while, but it was not uncomfortable. The landscape rolled past, harsh and beautiful in the late afternoon light. Hannah studied the terrain, so different from the green fields of Kansas she had grown up with. Here everything seemed built to survive rather than thrive. Yet there was a stark beauty in the resilience of the desert plants and the vast open sky. The ranch came into view as they crested a rise. A modest house of adobe and wood with a barn, corral, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in a fenced pasture, and chickens scratched in a yard beside the house. It was simple but well maintained, and Hannah felt something ease in her chest. This was real. This was to be her life now. Lucas helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk to the house. The interior was dim and cool after the brightness outside, with simple furnishings and clean swept floors. He showed her through the main room with its fireplace and table, the kitchen area with a good iron stove, and then down a short hallway to 2 bedrooms. This was to be the nursery, he said, indicating the smaller room. "I have moved a bed in for you. The larger room is mine. I want you to understand that I expect nothing from you, Miss Kennedy, beyond companionship and help with the ranch. If in time we find we suit each other as husband and wife in all ways, that will be your choice to make." Hannah looked at him in surprise. Most men would not have made such an offer. "You are very considerate, Mr. Hannigan," Lucas pleads, "and it is not consideration, just common sense. We are strangers yet. Marriage on paper is one thing, but trust is earned." He set her trunk down by the bed. "Freshen up if you like. I need to unload the wagon and tend the animals. There is water in the pitcher, and I will start supper in about an hour." After he left, Hannah stood in the small room that was now hers and slowly let out a breath she had been holding. The bed was simple but looked comfortable, with a clean quilt folded at its foot. A small window looked out over the desert scrubland toward the mountains. It was more than she had dared hope for. In Kansas, after her parents died, she had slept in a cramped room shared with 3 other laundry workers, with barely enough space to turn around. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 other dresses on the pegs provided, and setting her mother's Bible and her father's pocket watch on the small table beside the bed. These were her treasures, all she had left of her family. Then she poured water from the pitcher into the basin and washed the dust from her face and hands, careful around her scars. The wounds had healed years ago, but the tissue was still sensitive and tight. When she emerged from her room, she found Lucas in the kitchen area, peeling potatoes with efficient movements. He had removed his hat and his hair was slightly damp, as though he too had washed up. "Can I help?" Hannah asked. "Can you cook?" "Yes, my mother taught me." He smiled, the expression transforming his face and making him look younger. "Then I will gladly hand this over to you. I can manage basic meals, but I am no chef." There is beef in the cold box, potatoes here, and onions in that basket. Make whatever you think best." Hannah rolled up her sleeves and set to work, finding a strange comfort in the familiar tasks. Cooking had always soothed her, the methodical preparation and the alchemy of turning simple ingredients into something nourishing. Lucas moved to set the table, then started a fire in the stove without her needing to ask. They worked in companionable silence, and Hannah began to think that perhaps this arrangement might work after all. Over supper, Lucas told her more about the ranch. He ran about 200 head of cattle and sold beef to the army fort 30 miles north, as well as to buyers who came through Oro Blanco. It was modest but steady work. He also kept horses, breeding and training them, which was his true passion. "A good horse is worth more than gold out here," he said, "and I have a knack for working with them." "Will you teach me to ride?" Hannah asked. "I only rode old plow horses back home, and that was bareback on our farm. Of course, you will need to ride if you are going to help me here. I have a gentle mare named Daisy who will be perfect for you to learn on." He paused, then added, "If you are willing to work the ranch with me, that is. Some women prefer to keep to the house." "I am not afraid of work," Hannah assured him. "I would like to be useful." "Then we will suit each other well." After supper, Hannah insisted on cleaning up while Lucas went to check on the animals one final time before dark. She washed the dishes in a basin, finding the kitchen well organized and better stocked than she had expected. Through the window, she could see Lucas in the corral, running his hands over a horse's legs, his movements careful and thorough. There was something peaceful about watching him work, a sense of competence and care that she found reassuring. When he returned, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They stood together on the porch for a moment, watching the colors fade. "It is beautiful here," Hannah said. "Different from Kansas, I imagine. Very different, but beautiful nonetheless." She turned to him. "Thank you, Lucas, for giving me this chance. I know my appearance makes me an unconventional choice." His expression grew serious. "Hannah, I need you to understand something. Those scars you carry, they are evidence that you survived something terrible. They do not make you less. They make you strong. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool." He met her eyes steadily. "I hope in time you will believe that yourself." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. She was not accustomed to such kindness, such straightforward acceptance. "I will try," she whispered. "That is all any of us can do." He opened the door for her. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a full day." That night, lying in her new bed, Hannah listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert, the distant cry of a coyote, the whisper of wind against the adobe walls. She thought about Lucas's words, about his steady presence and unexpected gentleness. She had come here expecting at best a business arrangement, a man who would tolerate her scars in exchange for domestic labor. Instead, she had found someone who seemed to see past them entirely, who spoke to her as though she were simply Hannah, not Hannah the scarred woman. It was disorienting and hopeful in equal measure. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Hannah woke early to prepare breakfast, then worked alongside Lucas on the ranch. True to his word, he began teaching her to ride on Daisy, a placid bay mare with gentle eyes. Hannah proved an apt student, and within a week, she was comfortable enough to ride out with him to check on the cattle. The physical work was demanding, more so than the laundry had been, but Hannah welcomed it. She grew stronger, her arms and back developing muscles from hauling water, mending fences, and helping to move cattle. Her skin darkened from the sun despite wearing a bonnet, and she found she slept deeply at night, too exhausted for the nightmares that had plagued her since the fire. Lucas was patient and thorough in teaching her ranch work, never condescending or impatient when she did not immediately understand something. She learned to read the sky for weather, to spot a lame cow in a herd, to mend tack, and a dozen other skills she had never imagined needing. In return, she kept the house clean and filled it with good food, mended his clothes, and tended a small garden she started near the house. They talked while they worked, sharing stories of their pasts. Hannah learned that Lucas had grown up in Texas, the youngest of 5 children, and had come to Arizona territory seeking his own land after his father died and the family ranch was sold. His late wife, Mary, had been a schoolteacher in Oro Blanco, and their courtship had been brief but happy. "She wanted children so badly," he said one day as they were riding back from checking a water tank. "She was so excited when she realized she was pregnant, and then everything went wrong so fast." "You blame yourself?" Hannah asked gently, recognizing the shadow that crossed his face. "I did at first. I wondered if there was something I could have done differently, if I should have gotten her to a doctor sooner, but the midwife said nothing would have made a difference. Sometimes these things just happen." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you blame yourself for the fire?" "Every day," Hannah admitted. "I go over it in my mind, thinking about what I might have done differently. If I had been faster, if I had thought to wet a blanket, if I had not hesitated. But you tried. You went into a burning building trying to save them. That took more courage than most people have. It did not save them. No, but Hannah, you cannot measure courage by outcomes, only by actions. You risked your life trying. That matters." They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Lucas said, "I think Mary would have liked you. She always said the measure of a person was how they treated others when there was nothing to gain from it. You are kind to the animals, you work hard without complaint, and you have never once made me feel as though I owe you anything beyond what we agreed upon. That speaks well of your character." Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "You make it easy to be kind. You have been nothing but decent to me." Then perhaps we are both fortunate. As October arrived and the weather began to cool slightly, Hannah realized she was happy. The word surprised her when it formed in her mind one morning as she was gathering eggs from the chicken coop. The chickens clucked around her feet, and the sun was warm on her back, and she was simply happy. It had been so long since she had felt anything beyond grief or determination, or the dull gray of survival, that the emotion felt almost foreign. That evening she mentioned it to Lucas as they sat on the porch after supper, something that had become their habit. "I realize today that I am happy here," she said. "I had not expected that." Lucas, who had been whittling a piece of wood, paused and looked at her. "I am glad to hear that." "I have been happy too, happier than I have been in years. The house feels alive again with you in it. It is a good house, a good home." Hannah hesitated, then added, "I feel safe here. After the fire, I never quite felt safe anywhere. I was always waiting for the next disaster. But here, with you, I feel as though I can breathe again." "You are safe here," Lucas said firmly. "I give you my word on that, Hannah. As long as I draw breath, nothing will harm you." The intensity of his statement made her look at him more closely. In the fading light, his face was serious, his blue eyes holding hers with an expression she could not quite read, but that made her heart beat faster. "You have already given me so much," she said softly. "More than I dared hope for. It is not charity, Hannah. You have given me just as much. I was lonely, and you have filled that emptiness. I was simply going through motions, and you have reminded me what it feels like to look forward to the day." He set down his whittling. "I want you to know that I have come to care for you deeply. Not because I need a wife to work the ranch, but because you are you. Because you are strong and kind and you make me laugh. Because when I see you each morning, something in me eases that I did not even realize was tight." Hannah felt tears slip down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I care for you too," she whispered. "I was afraid to admit it, even to myself, because I thought perhaps you were just being kind, that you could not possibly feel more than duty toward me." "Why would you think that?" Lucas reached over and gently wiped a tear from her unscarred cheek with his thumb. "Because of these," Hannah said, touching her scars. "Because no man has looked at me with anything but pity or revulsion since the fire. Because I thought I would spend my life alone." Lucas stood and held out his hand to her. When she took it, he drew her to her feet and cupped her face gently in both hands, his thumbs tracing her scars with infinite tenderness. "These are part of you, but they are not all of you. When I look at you, I see a woman who survived, who had the courage to start over in a strange place with a strange man. I see someone who works hard and laughs at my poor jokes and has brought joy back into my life. The scars are just marks, Hannah. They do not define you. They do to everyone else. Then everyone else is blind." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and pressed a gentle kiss to one of her scars, then another, then the third. "Beautiful," he murmured. "You are beautiful, Hannah Kennedy." She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and reached up to touch his face. "How did I find you? Of all the advertisements I could have answered, how was I lucky enough to find you? I ask myself the same question." He kissed her forehead, then her unscarred cheek, then finally, gently, her lips. The kiss was tender and sweet, and Hannah felt something inside her that had been frozen since the fire finally began to thaw. When he pulled back, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Will you marry me properly, Hannah? Not just on paper, but in truth? Will you be my wife in all ways?" "Yes," Hannah breathed. "Yes, I will." They were married by the minister in Oro Blanco the following Sunday, a simple ceremony attended by the few townspeople Lucas counted as friends. Hannah wore her best dress, and Lucas had gotten a haircut and wore a clean shirt. The minister's wife had brought flowers from her garden, and the church was filled with afternoon sunlight. When Lucas said his vows, his voice was steady and sure, and when he kissed her at the end of the ceremony, Hannah felt as though her life was truly beginning for the first time in years. That night, Lucas was tender and patient, and Hannah discovered that physical love could be gentle and sweet, nothing like the rough fumbling she had feared based on whispered conversations among the laundry workers. He took his time, murmuring endearments and checking that she was comfortable, that this was what she wanted. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in his bed, which was now their bed, Hannah felt complete in a way she had not known was possible. "I love you," Lucas said into the darkness. "I should have said it before, but I am saying it now. I love you, Hannah." "I love you too," she replied, and the words felt like a promise, like a benediction, like coming home. The winter was mild that year, and Hannah thrived in her new life. She had always been resilient, but now she had something to be resilient for. She and Lucas worked side by side, building their life together with the same care they gave to mending fences and training horses. They laughed together, worked together, and in the quiet evenings they talked about their dreams for the ranch, for their future. In February, Hannah realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be certain before telling Lucas, remembering what he had said about losing Mary and the baby. When she finally spoke, they were in the barn, and Lucas was checking on a pregnant mare. "Lucas, I need to tell you something." He looked up from examining the mare's belly, and something in her tone made him straighten immediately. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, I am pregnant." The color drained from his face, and for a moment Hannah thought he might faint. Then he was striding across the barn, pulling her into his arms and holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Are you certain?" as certain as I can be. I have missed 2 courses, and I have been feeling queasy in the mornings." Lucas pulled back enough to look at her, and she was stunned to see tears on his cheeks. "I am terrified," he admitted. "After what happened with Mary, I swore I would never go through that again. But Hannah, I am also so happy, so incredibly happy." "I am frightened too," Hannah confessed. "But we will face this together. And Lucas, I am strong. The fire did not kill me, and I do not intend to let childbirth do so either." He laughed, though it sounded more like a sob. "You are the strongest person I know. If anyone can do this, you can. But we are getting the doctor from Tucson, even if I have to pay him a fortune to come out here." "That seems reasonable," Hannah agreed, smiling. "Now stop crushing me and let me breathe." The months that followed were anxious but also filled with quiet joy. Lucas was attentive to the point of being overprotective, insisting Hannah not lift anything heavy or ride out to check the cattle. Hannah bore his fussing with amused patience, knowing it came from love and fear. She continued to work around the ranch, moving more slowly as her belly grew, but refusing to be an invalid in July when the heat was oppressive, and Hannah felt as large as one of the cattle. Her labor began. Lucas had indeed paid a doctor from Tucson to come stay at the ranch for the last 2 weeks, and the man proved his worth as the labor stretched on through the night and into the next day. Hannah labored with determination, drawing on the same strength that had gotten her through the fire, through the loss of her parents, through all the hardships of her life. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and squalling, the doctor announced, "It is a boy, a healthy boy." Lucas, who had insisted on being present despite the doctor's objections, was at Hannah's side in an instant. "You did it," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You did it, Hannah. He is perfect." The baby was placed in her arms, and Hannah looked down at the tiny face with wonder. He had Lucas's dark hair and a surprisingly strong grip. "Hello, little one," she murmured. "Welcome to the world." They named him Samuel after Lucas's father, and he thrived from the start. Hannah recovered quickly from the birth, and life on the ranch adjusted to accommodate the new member of their family. Samuel was a good baby, content to sleep in a basket near wherever Hannah was working, and as he grew, he showed signs of his father's temperament, calm and observant. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, and Lucas's reputation as a horse trainer spread, bringing buyers from as far as Tucson and even California. Hannah proved to have a gift for managing the financial side of the business, keeping careful records and negotiating shrewdly with buyers. Together, they built something solid and lasting. When Samuel was 3, Hannah gave birth to twin girls, Emily and Grace. The birth was easier than Samuel's had been, and Lucas was marginally less terrified, though he still paced outside the bedroom like a caged mountain lion, until the doctor emerged with the news that all was well. The girls looked like Hannah, with her light brown hair and hazel eyes, and Lucas loved to point out that Emily had her mother's determined chin. Life with 3 children was chaotic but joyful. The house that had once been so silent was now filled with laughter and tears, with the patter of small feet and the endless questions of curious minds. Hannah sometimes marveled at how her life had changed. The scarred woman who had arrived in Oro Blanco on a wagon, uncertain and afraid, had become a confident rancher's wife, a mother, and a respected member of the community. The scars were still there, of course. They always would be. But they had faded somewhat with time, and more importantly, Hannah had learned to see them differently. They were no longer marks of shame or loss, but evidence of survival, of strength. When Samuel asked about them, as he inevitably did around age 4, she told him honestly about the fire, about his grandparents, about how she had tried to save them. "Were you scared?" he asked, tracing one of the scars gently with his small finger. "Yes," Hannah admitted. "I was very scared. But I tried anyway because I loved them." "You are brave, Mama." "Thank you, sweetheart. Your papa says the same thing." "Papa is right," Samuel said with the absolute certainty of a child. "Papa is always right." Lucas, overhearing this from where he was mending a saddle, laughed. "Your mother might disagree with that, son." "Only sometimes," Hannah said, smiling at her husband. "Only sometimes." One evening when Samuel was 6 and the twins were 3, a traveler came to the ranch seeking shelter for the night. It was not unusual. The ranch was on the route to Tucson, and Lucas and Hannah had a reputation for hospitality. The man was weathered and tired, with the look of someone who had traveled hard. Lucas invited him to share their supper and sleep in the barn. Over the meal, the traveler told stories of his journeys, and eventually the conversation turned to the fire that had consumed a homestead in Kansas years before. "Terrible tragedy," the man said. "I heard about it when I was passing through that area. Whole family killed, they said. Parents and a daughter." Hannah felt Lucas's hand find hers under the table. "The daughter survived," she said quietly. "I am she." The traveler looked at her in surprise, his eyes going to her scars. "I apologize, madam. I did not know. The story I heard said all had perished." "I survived, though it was a near thing. I lost my parents that night, but I lived, and I built a new life here." She squeezed Lucas's hand. "A good life." "That takes strength," the traveler said respectfully. "Not everyone could have done that." After the man had gone to the barn for the night, Hannah and Lucas sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast desert sky. "Does it still hurt?" Lucas asked. "When people mention the fire, always," Hannah admitted. "I do not think that grief ever truly leaves. But it has changed. It is softer now, more like an old ache than a sharp pain. And the happiness I have found here with you and the children, it balances the sorrow. I can remember my parents with love instead of just agony." "I feel the same about Mary," Lucas said. "I will always love her, always mourn what might have been. But I love you too, Hannah, with my whole heart. The past is part of us, but it does not have to define us." "When did you become so wise?" Hannah teased gently. "I have a very wise wife. It must be rubbing off on me." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, listening to the night sounds of the desert. Inside, the children were asleep, safe and warm. The ranch was prosperous, the cattle healthy, the horses well trained. It was not the life Hannah had imagined for herself as a girl in Kansas, but it was a good life, a full life, and it was hers. As the children grew, they became part of the ranch work, learning to ride and rope and mend fences alongside their parents. Samuel showed his father's gift with horses, able to calm even the most skittish colt with patience and soft words. Emily inherited her mother's head for figures and kept elaborate records of the ranch's production, even as a young girl. Grace was the dreamer, often found sitting on the fence rails composing stories about the cattle and horses, giving them names and personalities. When Samuel was 10, he asked his father about his mother's scars. Not the simple question of a young child, but a deeper inquiry. "Papa, Mama has those scars on her face. Some of the boys in town said mean things about them. I got in a fight." Lucas, who was shoeing a horse, set down his tools and looked at his son seriously. "What kind of mean things?" "They said she looked like a monster. They said I must be ashamed to have a scarred mother." Samuel's hands were clenched into fists. "I hit the one who said it. I appreciate you defending your mother, but fighting should be a last resort. Those boys spoke out of ignorance and cruelty, which says far more about them than it does about your mother." Lucas paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your mother is the bravest person I know. Those scars came from her running into a burning building trying to save her parents. Most people would have stood frozen with fear, but not Hannah. She acted, even knowing she might die. That is courage, son, real courage. And anyone who looks at those scars and sees anything but a mark of honor is not worth your time or anger. Samuel was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. I am proud of Mama, as you should be. As am I every single day. I still punch that boy, though, I know. You will do extra chores for a week as punishment for fighting. But between you and me, I probably would have done the same thing at your age. Samuel grinned, and Lucas ruffled his hair affectionately. That evening, when Samuel told Hannah about the incident, apologizing for fighting, she pulled him into a hug. I am sorry you had to deal with that, sweetheart. I know my scars can make things difficult sometimes. No, Mama. You should not apologize. Those boys were wrong, and I am glad I hit him, even if I have to do extra chores. Hannah laughed and kissed the top of his head. You are a good son, Samuel, but your father is right that fighting should not be your first choice. Words can be powerful too. What would you say to those boys? Hannah thought for a moment. I would tell them that everyone bears scars of some kind. Some are visible, like mine, and some are invisible, carried in the heart and mind. But we are all marked by our experiences, and those marks make us who we are. My scars remind me that I survived, that I was loved, and that I had the courage to keep going even when it would have been easier to give up. I would not erase them even if I could, because they are part of my story. Samuel hugged her tighter. I love your story, Mama. I love it too, sweetheart, especially the chapters that include you and your sisters and your father. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythm of ranch life, the cycle of seasons, and the milestones of children growing. Samuel grew tall and capable, taking on more responsibility around the ranch. The twins were inseparable, though their personalities remained distinct. Emily practical and organized, Grace imaginative and artistic. When Hannah was 33 and Lucas 40, they had another child, a surprise late addition to the family. This daughter they named Rose, and she was doted on by her older siblings. Samuel, at 16, proved remarkably patient with the baby, walking her around when she was fussy and making her laugh with silly faces. The twins, 13 by then, treated her like a living doll, dressing her up and singing to her. We have built something good here, Lucas said one night as they stood together watching their children play in the yard before supper. Samuel was teaching the twins to rope a fence post while Rose toddled nearby under his watchful eye. We have, Hannah agreed. Sometimes I still cannot quite believe this is my life, that I have all this. You deserve all this and more. You have worked for it, Hannah. Every day you have worked to build this family, this home. None of this would exist without you. It exists because of both of us, Hannah corrected. We are partners in this, Lucas. We always have been. He pulled her close, and she leaned into his embrace, still finding comfort in his solid presence after all these years. The love between them had deepened and matured, growing from that first tentative connection into something unshakable. They had weathered hardships together, dry years when the cattle struggled, illnesses that swept through the family, the death of Lucas's mother, and the difficult task of settling her estate. Through it all, they had held fast to each other. As the children grew older and more independent, Lucas and Hannah found time to sit together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. They discussed ranch business, shared stories from their days, and made plans for the future. Lucas wanted to expand into raising sheep as well as cattle, a controversial idea in cattle country. Hannah thought they should invest in better irrigation for the garden and fields. They debated and compromised, always finding a path forward together. When Samuel turned 20, he announced he wanted to start his own horse training business on a portion of the ranch land. Lucas and Hannah discussed it privately and agreed to help him build a house and barn of his own. "He is ready," Lucas said. "He has my skills with horses and your business sense. He will do well." "I am not ready for him to be grown," Hannah admitted. "It seems like just yesterday he was that tiny baby in my arms." "I know, but we raised him to be independent and capable. We should be proud." "I am proud." "I am also sad. Can I be both?" "You can be both," Lucas assured her, pulling her close. "I am both too." The twins followed their own paths as well. Emily married a young rancher from a neighboring spread when she was 21, a quiet young man named Peter who treated her with obvious adoration. Grace shocked everyone by moving to Tucson to work for a newspaper, writing articles about life in the territory. She visited often, bringing stories of the growing city and the changes coming to Arizona. Rose, the youngest, grew up surrounded by love and freedom. She had never known anything but the ranch, never known a time when her parents were not deeply in love. She was fearless in a way the older children had not been, riding wild horses bareback and climbing the highest trees. Lucas called her his wild Rose, and Hannah worried constantly but tried to let her daughter explore and grow. One evening when Rose was 16, and the house was quiet with just the three of them for supper, Rose asked about her mother's scars. She had been told the story as a child, but now she asked with new understanding. "Mama, were you scared to come out here, to marry Papa when you had never met him?" "Terrified," Hannah admitted. "I was scared he would take one look at me and change his mind. I was scared I would not fit in here, that I would fail. But I was also desperate for a new start, for a life beyond barely surviving in that Kansas laundry. So I gathered my courage and came." "I am glad you did," Rose said. "Otherwise none of us would be here." "I am glad too, sweetheart. Coming here, marrying your father, it was the best decision I ever made. Even in my fear, some part of me knew it was right." Lucas reached across the table and took Hannah's hand. "I was scared too," he admitted. "After losing Mary and the baby, I had sworn I would never risk my heart again. But loneliness is its own kind of death. I needed to try to live again, to open myself to the possibility of love. When I saw your mother step off that stagecoach, something in me recognized her. I cannot explain it better than that. I just knew." "That is romantic," Rose said, sighing. "I hope I find someone who looks at me the way Papa looks at you, Mama." "You will," Hannah assured her. "When the time is right, you will find someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you for it. That is the greatest gift." The years continued their steady march. Hannah and Lucas grew older together, their hair graying, their movements slower but no less purposeful. They remained active on the ranch, though Samuel took over more of the daily operations. They became grandparents, first to Emily's children, then to Samuel's when he married a woman from town named Clara. Even Grace, living her unconventional life in Tucson, eventually married a fellow journalist and had a daughter. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Hannah on a trip to Tucson, their first real journey together in years. They stayed in a hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked the streets of the growing city like young lovers. On their last evening, sitting in the hotel dining room, Lucas presented Hannah with a gift, a delicate silver locket. "Open it," he urged. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of Lucas and one of Hannah. "When did you have these made?" Hannah asked, touched. "Last month, when I went to town. I wanted you to have something to mark this occasion." 25 years, Hannah. 25 years of waking up beside you, of working beside you, of building this life together. You are still the best decision I ever made. And you are mine." Hannah fastened the locket around her neck, feeling the slight weight of it settle against her skin. "I never imagined I could be this happy, Lucas. After the fire, after losing my parents, I thought my life was over. But it was just beginning. You showed me that. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love when I thought I was unlovable. You were always lovable, Hannah. I just helped you see it." Lucas reached across the table and traced her scars gently, as he had done 1,000 times over the years. "Beautiful. You have always been beautiful to me." They returned to the ranch renewed, ready to step back further and let their children take the lead. Samuel proved an able manager, running the cattle operation with efficiency while expanding the horse training business. Emily and Peter purchased land adjacent to the ranch, increasing the family holdings. Grace wrote articles about ranch life that were published across the territory, making the Hanna Ranch, as it had become known, somewhat famous. Rose, true to her wild nature, married a deputy marshal when she was 22, a young man who could match her spirit for spirit. They settled in Oro Blanco, where he helped keep the peace in the growing town, and Rose opened a small school, teaching the children of ranchers and miners alike. Lucas and Hannah watched their family grow and flourish with deep satisfaction. They had built something lasting, not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love and perseverance. Their children and grandchildren knew the story of how Hannah had come to Oro Blanco scarred and uncertain, and how Lucas had seen past the surface to the strong woman beneath. It became a family legend, a testament to the power of acceptance and love. On a warm evening in May, when Hannah was 55 and Lucas 62, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, horses ran in the corral, and they could hear the sound of grandchildren playing near Samuel's house. "You ever regret it?" Hannah asked. "Sending for a mail-order bride instead of courting someone local?" "Never. Not for a single moment." Lucas took her hand, his thumb rubbing the worn gold band on her finger. "You were meant to be here, Hannah, with me. I believe that with my whole heart. I believe it too. Everything I went through, all the pain and loss, it led me here, to you, to this life. I would not change any of it, because changing it might mean losing what we have built. Even the fire," Lucas asked gently. "Even the scars," Hannah touched her face thoughtfully. "The scars were still there, faded and weathered but permanent. Even those," she said finally. "Because they are part of my journey. They remind me of where I came from, of what I survived, and they brought me to you, Lucas. They made me the woman you fell in love with, so yes, even those." Lucas pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The evening air was sweet with the scent of the roses Hannah had planted around the porch, descendants of the first wild rose Lucas had picked for her in their early days together. "I love you, Hannah Hannigan," Lucas said softly. "I have loved you from the moment I saw you step off that stagecoach, brave and uncertain and beautiful. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Lucas. You healed wounds I did not know how to heal myself. You taught me that I was worthy of love, of happiness, of a full life. You are my home, my heart, my everything." They kissed as the sun slipped below the horizon, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would endure through generations. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet, the legacy of their hard work and devotion evident in every fence post, every blade of grass, every child and grandchild bearing their name. Years later, when their great-grandchildren asked about the scars on their great-grandmother's face, they would be told the story. About a fire in Kansas, about a young woman's courage, about a stagecoach arriving in Oro Blanco carrying a scarred bride who did not know if she would be accepted. They would be told about Lucas, the rancher who looked past the scars to see the woman beneath, who healed wounds deeper than skin with his patient love and unwavering acceptance. And they would understand that the greatest love stories are not about perfection, but about seeing each other truly and choosing to love anyway, about building something lasting from broken pieces, about finding home in another person's heart. Hannah and Lucas lived long lives, dying within months of each other when Hannah was 81 and Lucas 88. They were laid to rest side by side in the small cemetery outside Oro Blanco, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names and the dates of their long lives. But their true memorial was the thriving family they left behind, the ranch that still bore Hannah's name, and the story of their love that would be told for generations. The Hanna Ranch continued to prosper, passed down through Samuel's line, and then to his children and grandchildren. The original house was preserved and expanded. The porch where Lucas and Hannah had spent so many evenings together maintained with loving care. Visitors to the ranch would often comment on the portrait that hung in the main room, painted when Hannah was 50, showing her seated with Lucas standing behind her, his hand on her shoulder. Her scars were visible in the painting, rendered honestly by the artist, but so was the love in her eyes as she looked up at her husband, and the pride in his face as he looked down at her. Rose, who outlived her siblings and lived to be 93, would tell the story to her great-great-grandchildren with tears in her eyes. Your great-great-grandfather used to say that Grandma Hannah was the strongest person he ever knew, and he was right. She survived fire and loss and came to a strange place with nothing but hope. She built a life here through sheer determination and with the love of a good man who saw her worth when she could not see it herself. That is the legacy of this family, children. Strength and love, and the courage to keep going even when life breaks your heart. The love story of Lucas Hannigan and Hannah Kennedy became woven into the history of Oro Blanco itself, a reminder that the Old West was not just about cowboys and cattle drives and gunfights, but also about people finding each other in hard places and building lives of meaning and purpose. It was about second chances and healing, about looking past the surface to see the truth beneath, about the transformative power of acceptance and love. And somewhere in that small cemetery outside town, under the vast Arizona sky they both loved, Lucas and Hannah rested together, their story complete but never forgotten, a testament to the enduring truth that love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds and turn the most broken beginning into the most beautiful life.